Now, in the story of Star Wars, Han, Luke, and Leia are caught in a garbage disposal, a garbage dispenser. And what happens is the walls start to close in on them. There's a scary, slimy monster in the bog there pulling them under. So they are meeting the greatest fear of their unconscious in that one scene. It's also called the belly of the whale. So this is where you meet that greatest fear and you merge with it and you merge with its power. What do you think that represents for you? Have you faced it already? Or is it something that you may have to face in the future? Now, in the Destiny 5 experience story, there is a character named Jessica. And within the story, Jessica is sent to prison and she is put on suicide watch. She is left in a brightly lit room and given nothing. And she keeps telling her nurses, please, I want to die, I want to die. And this was the scariest moment in her life because she was wrongly accused and she was wrongly placed there. So this represents her dark night, as all 5 of us in the Destiny 5 experience story did face a dark night of the soul within the story. Now, I'm not saying you're going to ever face anything quite that intense, but for you to complete a quest that is truly meaningful for you, you will have to deal with fear a little bit. So I want you to think about and feel what might be your deepest fear. Have you faced it already? Are you going to face it? This represents the Dark Night, and it is Act 2, Scene 3. Okay, we're coming down the home stretch. We're going into Act 3. This is Act 3, Scene 1, and the 7th phase of our 9-part Hero's Journey quest. And this is something I call the Sacramentor. And it's a word I created. It comprises of the word sacrifice and mentor, and I put it together to make the word Sacramentor. Now, in our stories of The Wizard of Oz and Star Wars, we're going to go to Star Wars for the moment. There are many of different mythologies and stories that talk about an old mentor who sacrifices him or herself for you in order to have a deeper understanding of yourself, of your world, of your quest. This is often represented by an Obi-Wan Kenobi or a Dumbledore or a Gandalf or an Aslan who willingly sacrifices their life to teach you a lesson. In the story of Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi is having a duel with Darth Vader. When Luke Skywalker shows up on the scene, Obi-Wan gives him a serenely mentor-like look, is the best way I can describe it, and then looks back to his nemesis Vader and allows Vader to cut him down and destroy him. Now, in The Wizard of Oz, I think this is represented by the witch being melted by the water. Now, even though the witch is quote-unquote the villain, what happens is water, which represents the emotion, is thrown on the witch and she melts away and evaporates, and all of a sudden she is not in physical form anymore. What I believe this represents, it is the transferring of all of this wisdom, all of this knowledge, this mentor-like ability, this inner guru gets transferred from the outside, meaning it gets transferred from an image that you can see on the outside, and it becomes internal. After Obi-Wan Kenobi sacrifices himself for Luke, Luke all of a sudden can hear Obi-Wan's voice in his mind. The Force has become internal for Luke. And it's the same kind of phenomenon. You get to a point where some kind of great inspiration, great teaching just comes out of you. And I can tell you from personal experience, this is real, this is true. Your dreams will be heightened at this point. Your intuition will be heightened. If you've gotten this far in the quest, you will become the embodiment of a mentor. So I want you to be aware of that and be prepared for that. I'm going to read once again from the Destiny 5 Experience book, and I'm going to focus once again on the character of Jessica. Now, when I asked Jessica to describe a moment in her life like that she had experienced, she said, "A dream, God placing a child in my arms." Now, I'm going to take you back to that prison cell, to that suicide watch room where Jessica was all alone. Jessica courageously stepped forward. There was the moment when I didn't know I would get my son back. The worst had happened. And I was truly at a point where I felt like I'm not going to make it. At the time, I was literally pacing in circles. I started praying out loud for the first time in my life, and I just blurted out the words, God, give me strength. God, give me strength. God, give me strength. I just said it over and over again, and I did this for half an hour. I was in a place where I was... Jessica stopped, glanced down at her shaking arm, and took a moment to find the precise words. I was physically injured, hurting, but to make a long story short, I fell asleep in a position that was very uncomfortable, but I had a very, very vivid dream. Just as she described all of this, Jessica was pacing in circles throughout her speech. She really impressed me with her ability to open up. When she spoke her truth, she filled the room very powerfully with her normally soft-spoken voice, which I'm sure the stage was very intimidating to a fairly shy person like Jessica. She became a little more comfortable, sat in the chair, and continued. I fell asleep on my side with one arm hanging over my bed. In my dream, these huge, transparent hands placed a crying child in my arms. The child's name was Samuel. I have no idea why. I keep meaning to look up the name Samuel and find out the meaning of the name, but I keep forgetting to do that. Anyway, I just know his name was Samuel. Jessica couldn't see me as the spotlight was reflecting off her eyes, but I was looking something up on my BlackBerry phone. Jessica continued. He was crying, a blonde little boy about 2 years old, which was the same age as my son at the time. Like God's clear hands, the boy was transparent as well. As soon as the baby was placed in my arms, he stopped crying. That's all I remember about the dream. Jessica suddenly remembered she was on stage again. She stopped for a moment, then suddenly quivered as she continued to tell her story. It's as if the same presence that had given her strength in the dream was prompting her forward in this moment during her audition. I remember waking up, and I did not hurt. The pain had gone. And I knew immediately in my mind that they were God's hands. The message I got was that this little crying boy needed me. I didn't know if that meant my son needed me at that moment or what, but the bottom line is I felt a new sense of peace. And Jessica did feel a new sense of peace. Her quivering had slowed and eventually ceased. I can't explain it. I slept that whole night, fell back asleep in the same position, and slept for the first time in a week. My life changed from that day forward. As Jessica finished her testimony, I walked meticulously up the center aisle toward the stage. Jessica, I searched for the name Samuel on the internet. I found the name's meaning. You did? What does it mean? My eyes met hers as I said, God heard. Literally, that's what it means. God heard. Tingles were trickling in both our nervous systems. I had no doubt in my mind now I wanted Jessica to be a part of this. It was as if my looking up the name at that precise moment confirmed that God had been watching and listening to my pleas for the intent. As I back off from reading the book, I want to let you know that if you've never experienced a moment like this in the past, you will experience it in the future if you take this quest. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just asking you to have a leap of faith, because there are powerful moments like this that do happen on these quests. This is one of the major reasons to take this quest. Not merely for the reason of getting what you want, but to have moments like this where you just touch something beyond yourself. Jessica, in that moment, the symbol would be a transparent hand. So now, based on my calculations, we should have 7 symbols so far. And we're going to go on to the 8th phase, which is Act 3, Scene 2, and this is called the climax. The climax. Now, this is where you have a moment that truly defines your life. All of your senses, all of your feelings, all of your actions and emotion now come down to one boiling moment of truth. These are the moments that we remember that define our lives. And you will never feel more alive than when you get to the climax of this 60-day quest. Now, I want you to think back into your life and think about any of these moments that have come up for you.